You guessed it. This is The Great Expanse by John Bat 426. This is the recap with no cap Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episode 2, called Shoot the Moon. I don't know why I did that. But the episode starts with Bullseye inside of a Catholic church, and I've always said that Catholic church imagery usually goes hand in hand with Daredevil because I believe that Matt Murdock was raised Catholic. You know, there's the nun who's his mom that we learned from the Netflix series, and it really shows how grounded the character Matt Murdock is in the culture of Hell's Kitchen. You know what I mean? So we see Bullseye there, and at the end of the scene with Bullseye, everything turns blue. So later on, you kind of are able to deduce that the visual aesthetic for Bullseye is this blue glare on things. So later in the episode, we see that Vanessa Fisk is in bed. There's a blue flower by her bedside. Then that blue light comes shining back in, and she's having a nightmare about Bullseye pointing a gun at her. She's holding a pen out. There's a piece of paper. I guess that's the contract she signed with Bullseye. Then in her dream, she says, "I know why you're hunting me." And when she wakes up, because I think he pulls the trigger in the dream, you see it's a red rose. So it was a red rose the whole time, but sort of the Bullseye effect is this blue light shining on things. And of course, we're still in the aftermath of Bullseye helping Matt Murdock, Daredevil. No, let me say it like this, because I'm gonna get to that point. He helped Daredevil against the ABTF when they went to go interrogate Cherry. Because remember, Kingpin is still looking for Achilleo and Christophe, who are the captain and first mate of the Northern Star, the ship that was ferrying, sorry about the brat in the background. It's not in this apartment, it's in the other apartment. But they were the captains of the Northern Star that were bringing in all these military-grade weapons through the Freeport, okay? And we learn later that Wilson Fisk is doing this for the CIA. So he's doing this for other, agencies. At first I was like, okay, is he just doing this for criminals or, crooked organizations? But in episode 1, the Contessa actually called Matthew Lillard's character. No, she didn't call Matthew, but she called the district attorney, and Matthew Lillard knew who it was. He's like, yeah, you want to answer that. So we see that there's a bigger scheme going on with these weapons. So that's why the Fisk wants to find and end the first mate and the captain. All right. So we see that Bullseye obviously is also, he's not being hunted with the same sort of vitality that Matt Murdock and Karen are, because they have posters for Karen and Daredevil. All right. And I keep making the mistake of saying Matt Murdock because I'm getting to that. Because let me just get to it now before I forget. So Buck Cashman, a forgettable supporting character, comes into Fisk's office and he's saying, "Why don't you expose Matt Murdock as being Daredevil?" And you see the Kingpin sort of ruminating on the idea, and he says, "No." He said, "A blind man who saved my life." He repeated it, "who saved my life." He said, "That'll just galvanize support for Daredevil if people find out that this blind lawyer who threw himself in the path of Bullseye's bullet for Kingpin saved his life." He says he don't want to do that. So then he comes up with I think I said this while I was watching it. He's going to polarize Matt Murdock and Daredevil to the ultimate end of destroying both of them because they're one and the same. So then he puts out posters saying missing Matt Murdock. He says that Matt Murdock is a hero. All right. So he's painting Matt Murdock as a hero while painting Daredevil as a villain. So either way, people are going to be looking for both Matt Murdock and Daredevil. So it was a great sort of Lex Luthor-esque sort of scheme, you know what I mean, to get things to work in his favor. Now, Daniel, whatever his last name is, Michael Gandolfini, son of James Gandolfini, who plays the deputy mayor, another worthless character. Yes, I'm sorry. He's sitting in Fisk's office, and prior to that, Sheila is having a conversation with Daniel because she saw that dark web, parody of the Kingpin, with the crooked mask, and he's talking about how he's crooked and he's dirty and his mayoral regime is just corrupt. You know what I mean? So she said, "Daniel, you have to tell Kingpin about this." And I was thinking, yeah, Daniel, you want to tell him before the Kingpin finds out himself. So next thing we know, Daniel finds himself in the Kingpin's office. All right. Because before he goes to Kingpin's office. Sheila says, there's a leak in this office because of the footage. She said, someone in this office leaked that footage for that video on the dark web. All right, so let me now get into the conversation between Kingpin and Daniel. A forgettable character. I'll reiterate that. Daniel's forgettable. He slides like a tablet or an iPad in front of him with the parody sketch. And Daniel's like, crap. And the Kingpin is like, you remember what I said? What would happen if you betrayed me? And he says it would be the last thing you do. All right. So he said, are you trying to, I'm summing it up. The Kingpin says, is there someone in this office that you're trying to protect? And Daniel says, one, you, the Kingpin. And Kingpin's like, right answer. So he's basically telling Daniel, because remember, Daniel thought that the Kingpin was going to kill him, all right? Because he has that power, physically. So Kingpin says, plug the leaks, all right? So then later we see Daniel in his apartment. He's made dinner for his girlfriend, I guess, or somebody he's flirting with, BB Yorick, who put all the BB reports out with everybody glazing the Kingpin and how great New York is. One woman said, New York ain't been this good in 30 years. She's like, I think the vigilantes sank that ship, the Northern Star, whatever. So then Daniel begins to slowly put it together. And he says, what do you know about this, dark web sketch or whatever? And he says, if you're the leak, he says, no, because somebody could have easily gotten this off my laptop. All right. Basically fingering her. So they're eating dinner in the process. And he said, if you're responsible for the leaks, stop. He says, you don't know what kind of trouble you could get into. He said, you hold me once by bringing the garbage scam that Kingpin had going on in season 1 to light. And she's like, I'm a different person. I'm a different person now. And I thought it was really thin. I feel like she should have really denied being involved in that. We see the re-emergence of Hector Ayala's niece, White Tiger's niece. She's like walking down the street with her aunt. They walk into this bodega or whatever, and they see a poster saying missing Matt Murdock. And they're like, I hope they find him, because Matt Murdock saved her. Again, I don't remember what the niece is, what her name is, from Muse. I don't think it was Daredevil. I think it was actually Matt Murdock that found her, okay, and saved her. So they go into the store. They see these young bulls like steal like a bottle of 40 or whatever, alcohol beverage, and put it in his coat. They start roasting each other, which I thought was kind of a kiddie thing to do. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's bad, but that's some kids do, like roasting each other, whatever. They're saying it in English and in Spanish. Then her aunt shows up and she's like, put it back. You know what I mean? She's like, stop messing around. He's like, mind your business, lady. So then we hear, and we see somebody holding a shotgun, and it's the store owner. So she's like, I think his name was Berto. She's like, Berto, calm down. Like, don't kill this kid. He's stupid. You know what I mean? And then we just see the bull get sucker punched. The guy holding the shotgun. Wow! And it's the AVTF, who just happened to be going to the store. So then the kid tries to run, the one that stole the bottle. He gets tripped. And so he's like sort of like manhandling the kid, this Hispanic kid. And then White Tiger's niece's aunt, I hope I said that correctly, while the AVTF officer is trying to wrangle the kid, she says, no, you don't have to do this. She puts her hand on his arm gently like this. And then he looks at her like, you know that meme with a dog that's like, he sort of does like this. He's like, assaulting an officer. And then he just like, I'm like, okay. So they're really painting the AVTF as just these brutes, these bullies that don't operate within the parameters of the law. Because of the Safe Streets initiative, they arrest the aunt for assaulting an officer. They throw in the back of this Humvee, not even a police car, but in the back of a Humvee, as if she just shot JFK. And of course, this is all the more fuel that Hector Ayala's niece needs to become the female version of White Tiger. Then she goes to Counselor McDuffie's office, who I don't care about, and she just starts crying, saying, they took away my tia, aunt, or whatever. And again, swipe. You know what I mean? Like, more activities for more meaningless characters. More. So in the meantime, Vanessa and the Kingpin, they basically have everything. And Vanessa's like, what more do you need, basically? Like, what else is there? All right. And they're having pillow talk. Matt Murdock and Karen are having pillow talk simultaneously. It really serves no purpose. Then Karen gets up and starts playing this song loudly, mind you, while they're in hiding. They start dancing. Then all of a sudden, this big sonic wave goes out that disorients Matt. All right. Because remember, some people in Kingpin's inner circle knows he's Daredevil. Okay. So they start with that. Like, so he goes, and then the ABTF invade the bar where they're hiding. They're living on top of the bar. I think they arrest or try to arrest the bartender, who no one cares about. Then there's an action sequence that just feels like it was just thrown into the end of the episode for like no real reason, to be honest with you. So it's like, all right, so now they can't go back to that bar. So Matt Murdock is fighting off the ABTF. There's no save from Bullseye this time, but Matt Murdock takes them out. Karen flees. She's stopped by one of the ABTF officers. She takes him out. Karen does. He has weapons. He has riot gear. She does some, I guess, punches him in the chest. Punches him a few times. So when her and Daredevil meet up later, after the bar is raided, she basically brings him to what looks like a locker room. It almost looks like the place where the Punisher was staying in season 1. And she says, "They're hunting us, right? Well, I think it's time we hunt them." So then the camera pans to that ABTF officer with a shroud over his head. And that's how the episode ends. So the tone of the episode, you still feel the gravitas of this ABTF, which I do believe should be one of the primary storylines, because it's basically just a bunch of rogue police officers just acting crazy. You know what I mean? I believe that Pal is probably one of the more meaningful characters. I also like Sheila, who's in Wilson Fisk's cabinet. You know what I mean? So I appreciate those two characters among the supporting cast. Everyone else can go. I'm so serious. I only like Pal and Sheila. I'm gonna name the other useless characters. Cherry, useless. McDuffie, useless. Daredevil's psychiatrist ex-girlfriend, pardon me, useless. Yeah, that was nasty. That bartender, useless. Daniel, the deputy mayor, useless. Buck Cashman, useless. BB York, useless. Useless. So many useless peripheral characters. And I'm like, Pal and Sheila. Now, Pal was the crooked cop that became like one of the heads of the ABTF. Good character, because we followed his story. Sheila is also, to me, a good character because she was resistant to Kingpin's regime when he first, got elected. But then she slowly started, to realize that if I want to survive, I better stay close to the Kingpin and be on his good side. All right. The only two supporting characters that mean anything to me. Okay. So I have to say that I don't think this was a bad episode. I don't. We see the menace of Bullseye. I feel like the menace of Bullseye was kind of portrayed in the right light, literally, because it's a blue light. But he really didn't do anything in this episode of Bullseye, except go to that priest. And who knows if he killed the priest or not, because he was like fumbling with like a sharp edge. Or remember, Bullseye can kill you with like the arm of these glasses. You know what I mean? So it doesn't take much for him to murk somebody. But I'm sick and tired of the whole I'm so traumatized that I go catatonic in the middle of a fight scene. Like Daredevil did it last week. Now, Vanessa had a bad dream this week about Bullseye. But like, can we give the whole priority to mental health just a break from our TV shows? Like, we know that in real life, okay? Like we're trying to figure out in the real world why people do what they do. And yes, it can be attributed to a mental disorder. Can we take that out of my shows though? Like somebody freezing and things going haywire in the background. You don't hear them because you're just focused on a person that's traumatized. Like, and somebody has to come over and go, "Billy," and they go, "Huh?" Like, can we stop that, please? Only because it's repetitive and this is television. All right. So for this episode, I'm gonna give it a C+. All right. Not a great episode, but it wasn't bad though. I don't think it was bad. I feel like the story ultimately is sort of pushed forward. We see the Kingpin solidifying power, but now we're seeing sort of pushback from Vanessa because she's scared poopless of Bullseye. So she realized that she got in over her head by contracting with Bullseye. So now she's talking about, hey, Kingpin, we still got that island. And he's like, I never liked the feeling of sand between my toes. I'm like, Fiskakin Skywalker or whatever. Okay, terrible name, I know. But C+ for this episode, not a bad episode. I thought it was okay. Who's the standout? I don't think there were any standouts in this episode, just to be honest. I don't think Matt Murdock was a standout. I do believe that Fisk is getting way too much screen time. The Kingpin should be a novelty. Like, when you pan to him, you should feel the menace of what's going to happen because you don't know what his intimate thoughts are. I mean, but unfortunately in this show, we do know because we see him. He has like almost more screen time than Daredevil. Like, I'm like, this should be called the Fisk Daredevil Born Again. It should be. You know what I mean? So again, C+, not a bad episode, but I think we can do better. Okay. Again, I give the first episode a B+. So this is sort of a step down. But again, there's less going on, so I'm not going to begrudge it for that. Now, we're going to continue with Daredevil Born Again Season 2, which isn't bad so far. All right, I didn't like the first season. But we're going to move on to Episode 3 at the recap with No Cap, John Batt, and I'll get back with you guys shortly.